Hello everybody. Ever wonder what this is called? It's called a nut. And on less expensive instruments anymore, it's usually made out of plastic. And on your finer instruments, it's made out of any number of materials, ivory and mother of pearl, but more commonly bone. And that is what we're going to focus on in this week's video. I have a bucket of bones that were picked up out of a field about 10 miles down the road here. And we are going to take these bones and we are going to make mandolin nuts out of it. But first, let's have a progress report on all of the things that got done here at Ratliff Mandolins this week. Well, let me start off by saying that we started this batch with 11 mandolins, and numbers 1, 2, and 8 are gone. They've been finished and delivered, which leaves us 8 mandolins left. Now, I had already fretted mandolin number 4 and mandolin number 11, and so this week I finished all of the rest of them. I fretted mandolin number 5, mandolin number 6, mandolin number 7, mandolin number 9, and mandolin number 10. I also put stain on mandolin number 4, a nice light chocolate, beautiful color on a style. And number 5 has been sanded and is ready for the stain. It's going to a local fella who's going to come by when I stain it and watch the whole process. Now let's get started making some nuts. I told you those bones come from a farm about 10 miles down the road, and let me tell you the story. I've got a friend of mine who's a big hunter, and he hunts all these places, and his next door neighbor, so to speak, has a farm with about 40 or 50 cows, and when one of those cows die, apparently this farmer guy's got a little remote corner on his farm that he just drags the carcass to. So my friend comes to me and says, there's a huge pile of bones down here that's been accumulated over the years. And if you want, I've asked the farmer if it's okay, and he said, yeah, if you want, I'll bring you a few bags of those bones, which he did. And I kind of sawed the heads off of the joints for most of what you see in that bucket, and just throwed them all in one pile. And that's what we're going to be working with to make these nuts. What I've done is I've set the bandsaw up with a fence, and we're going to try to saw these chunks into the proper length, more or less, for a mandolin. I'm going to leave them a little overcut for maybe a wide neck and the square up and all like that, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to turn a pile of big chunks into a pile of smaller, more workable chunks. Once I'm finished with that, the bandsaw needs to have a new setup so I can resaw those chunks into pieces that can be shaped into nuts. And I like to saw on a piece of board, as you can see there, so that there's not that big hole right around the bandsaw blade that's going to pull one of those smaller chunks in there and perhaps pull my finger along with it. Now, it's a bit of a guessing game as to where and how to saw these chunks up. You have to take each chunk and kind of study it and examine it and figure out where you can get a piece big enough to make a nut out of. You want to be able to square things up and all that kind of stuff to have a workable nut blank. Believe it or not, that bucket of bones yielded almost 500 rough blanks. I went and took about 200 of those blanks and went ahead and squared them up and all like that, and left about 300 of them just fresh off of the saw. And that's what we're looking at right there. The pile on the left is the finished blanks, about 200 of them. They are ready to fit to a mandolin, and the rest of them are just fresh, like I said, fresh off the saw. This is a couple of shots of just the pile of scrap that I had. There's more scrap, a bigger pile of scrap than there are finished products. So, which I have no use for. I have no idea what to do with them. They're no good as compost or anything else, so I guess I'm just going to throw them away. The very rough blanks I'm just going to leave them in the bucket and store them on a shelf. And as for the more refined squared up nut blanks, they have their own special box, and they're going to be stored on their own special shelf along with all the other stuff I use to finish a mandolin with. For example, truss rod covers, tail pieces, end pins, ferrules, screws, and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we're going to put the nut blanks. And that just about catches you up with all of the happenings here at Ratliff Mandolins this week. Why don't you check back with us next week and every week thereafter for another edition of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary Series. And thank you so very much for hanging out to the bitter end, and we'll see you in a future episode. Bye.